Jonathan Monstein. This is my American Literature final, and in this final I'll show growth in 10 standards. So the first standard I'll be analyzing to show improvement on in this project is standard RI7, which was purpose question. For purpose questions, we had to determine the purpose, word type, style, etc. of an article or passage, which was given to us by Mrs. Brayman.
By using Mrs. Brayman's side notes and asking her questions as to what I should be doing, I discovered that I could use details such as quotes to support all my claims, and that I had been missing parts of questions. For our analysis of the text of How Poverty Affects Brains, I did both of these things and received a 4.
This skill will be useful in college because I will read the questions more completely and support all my claims better. The next standard I'll be analyzing is standard RI10. For standard RI10, we had to compare and contrast the content, style, and purpose of two different texts. After reading two texts, we had to list similarities and differences of the purpose, style, and content of each text.
By using notes Mrs. Brayman left on my paper, I went from a 2.5 on our practices to a 4 on the summative because I better understood what Mrs. Brayman was looking for, and I gave proof to support all of my answers.
This skill could be useful in college when I'm comparing and contrasting texts because I will know what to compare and contrast and to show proof of all of my claims. The next standard I'll be analyzing is standard RI2, which dealt with the comparison of claims. For this standard, we had to give two claims and then give numerous details to support each claim, and then discuss key details and how the claims relate to one another.
Well, I started at a 2.5 in this standard. By discussing with Mrs. Brayman what more I could do, I added ethos details to our Fallen Angels claim analysis questions, and my score went up to a 4.
This skill will be useful in college because I will be used to providing more details to support each of my claims.
For standard W1C, we were working with persuasive essays, and the purpose of the standard was to write a counterclaim and crush it. After discovering I had received a 3 on this standard for my first persuasive essay due to a flaw in my evidence, I worked harder and made sure all evidence was solid and managed to receive a 4 on my essay about minimum wage. This will be useful in college because it will add strength to my claims when I am writing persuasive essays. For standard W2G, we were working with transcendence essays, and the purpose of this standard was to include a piece of media and give it a caption. On this standard, I earned a 3 on the rough draft of my transcendence essay by adding an appropriate picture with an appropriate caption. On my final draft of this paper, I increased my score to a 4 by adding a "so what" to the caption. In college, media will draw attention to my articles and papers, and captions will make the media more effective.
Standard RI9 deals with evaluating claim and evidence of a text. For this standard, we had to evaluate the sufficiency, relevancy, and effectiveness of numerous details in the text.
In this standard, for practices, I started at a 2.5 because my answers were not well supported and had little detail. However, on the summative, I increased my score to a 3.5 by labeling all the details with numbers and telling which claim they supported. I then used this chart that I had created to support the rest of my answers on the page and made sure that each answer I gave had a detail to support my claim.
This skill will be useful in college because I will be able to evaluate the quality of details in texts.
Standard RI6 was figurative language practice. For this standard, we had to determine the figurative language used in a passage and discuss how it affected the tone of the passage. For this standard, I got a 2.5 on Walden analysis practice because I didn't support any of the claims I was making in my answers. However, I bumped my score up to a 4 by supporting the claims I made with details from the text, and additionally, I took a word from each passage and explained how each figurative language trick was represented by this word. For example, the forest represents freedom from the problems of society, which is a form of symbolism. This skill will be useful in college because I will be able to determine what figurative language is used in a text and why. For standard RI4, we had to do an analysis of a text by Walden, and for this standard we had to determine the text structure and state how we knew we were correct. For this standard, I earned a 3 on a Walden analysis practice. However, on the summative assignment, I bumped my score up to a 4 by taking one word from each passage and explaining how the text structure revolved around each word that I had chosen. For example, question 1 on my RI4 summative is a problem solution, and the word lonesome is the problem. This skill will be useful in college because if I can determine the text structure of a given passage, then I can better determine the purpose of the passage. Standard RI5 built on standard RI4 by explaining how the text structure was or was not effective. Again, my score began as a 3 for this standard, however increased when I used the single word I had taken and explained how it helped make the passage effective. For example, I said the solution would not fix the problem, which would be loneliness, according to the author, and therefore the text structure would not be effective. This skill could be useful in college because it will allow me to determine what text structures I should use in my own writing. For standard RL4, we analyzed characters from a book. For this standard, we had to list traits about a character, then give quotes and specific details as to how we gathered such information, and then discuss the role of the character in the book. For this standard, I started at a 1.5 because I gave no details to support how I had learned the information. However, my score increased to a 2.5 when I gave a few specific details and continued to increase when I had given quotes. For example, I said that we learned that Peter from A Walk Across America was brave through indirect methods because it doesn't come out and say he's brave, but he risks his life to protect his dog and his family. This skill will be useful in college when I am analyzing characters and determining their roles in films and books. In this project, I have proved that I have shown growth in 10 standards: standard RI7, RI10, RI2, RI9, RI6, RI4, RI5, RL4, W1C, and W2G. I have grown a lot as a student over the year, and I thank Mrs. Brayman for that. Thank you for an awesome year in English, and have a nice summer.